Hi, my name is Jayoza, and I want to talk about this important question that is asked when you're interviewing for a job. And the question is, what is your biggest weakness? We all prepare for this question, and it's a question we kind of dread, like, oh, I'm going to have to tell them about something that I don't want to. What do I do? What do I do? This is a very tricky question for both the interviewer and the interviewee. Let me first focus on the interviewer. If this is one of those checklist questions, like, okay, I gotta ask this, then it's a bad question to ask by the interviewer. There is no purpose behind asking that question. In fact, it's a sign that the interviewer is a bad interviewer, in my opinion. And believe me, most interviewers screw this question up. They just don't know when to even ask this question. Give you a case in point. We just recently had the Republican presidential debates, the CNBC Republican presidential debates. And guess what the first question was that this moderator asked the candidates? What is your biggest weakness? Bad! You never ask that as the first question. First of all, these are politicians. What are they going to tell you? Like, I'm just a bad speaker or something, just terrible things. They're not going to do it, and they didn't. It was a waste of time. It would have been more appropriate if that question had been asked more at the end of the debate, when all these guys have been talking about what a great job they can do for the country, and they're going to they're the best and everything like that. They're pumping themselves up, and now you ask them at the end. This is a trust and character question that has to be asked at a right time, and then you just listen and see how the person handles the question. I have to tell you a story about before I go more into this. And the story is a very interesting story. And it dates back to the time of when John F. Kennedy became the president. And he had his first cabinet meeting. And at that time, Lyndon Johnson was his vice president. And he was just like blown away by the smartness of Kennedy's cabinet. He had some of the brightest people. In fact, it's even documented in this book called The Best and the Brightest by David Halberstam, one of the classic books you gotta read. After the cabinet meeting, Johnson goes to meet with his mentor, Sam Rayburn. And he's just impressed like hell with all the people that he met at that cabinet. And Sam is listening to him. He's a wise man. And then he says, Lyndon, I think they may be as intelligent as you say they are, but I would feel more comfortable if one of those guys had run for the sheriff office once. And that is the key question right there. Like, okay, these are bright people, but where have they ever faced any kind of setback? And they probably didn't. These are some of the brightest people that Kennedy had assembled, and they essentially screwed up the Vietnam War. Because when you hire somebody for their strengths, you're only looking at their upside. But if you don't know their weakness, then the bottom is essentially the floor. You need to protect against the downside. So that's the interviewer. Let's look at it from the interviewee side. Let's see if I'm asked that question. Again, this question is about two things: trust and character. Because you got to protect your downside. There is no other way you're going to be able to do it. Just knowing strength means that's the potential. That's great if if it gets met. But what if it doesn't? The downside could be the floor. And you can't have that. That costs companies money. It can destroy the companies. If you're asked that question, you want to go right to your weakness. Do not be afraid. Go for it. Because the way I look at it is, this is a confidence question. If you're confident in talking about your strength, then you better be confident in talking about your weakness. It shows your self-awareness. So let's say you have strength and you have weakness. If your weakness isn't credible, then I don't think I'm going to really buy your strength. If your weakness is credible, it makes your strength that much stronger. That's how I look at it. So this is a very important question. It comes down to trust and character, but it shows the confidence that you're willing to acknowledge your weakness. You're willing to show your vulnerability. You're willing to be credible about your potential weakness. You're self-aware. And then the last thing you got to do is you have to basically show that how you're overcoming that weakness. So for example, let's say if I'm asked this question, Jay, what is your biggest weakness? Let's say this came at the end of the interview. And I would say, I'm glad you asked that question. I would say my biggest weakness is fear of being uncomfortable. And it is something that I have to always work hard to overcome. Because, we all fall into our comfort zone where it's safe. And then when something new comes up, your immediate instinct is to not do it because suddenly you're going out of your comfort zone and there's something in your head that tells you don't do it. But then I think about it and I said, I'd rather do it and be glad even if it doesn't work out than not do it at all. And just being in this interview, I'm uncomfortable. But if you want something, if you think you can really add value, you have to go out of your comfort zone. So part of my being here interviewing is being out of my comfort zone. But, it's something, if you want it, you got to get out of your comfort zone. But I still have fear, but I know how to overcome it. So I'm not sure if that's the good enough answer, but that's an honest answer. I'm not telling anything that's not true here. But I've done several things here. I've been very upfront with the person. I want to be trustful. I want to be, I want to show that I have character here. I'm not going to give you some bogus answer. I want to establish trust because this is the only question. If the interviewer is really got all candidates that are equal, this is the question that is a key, that is differentiates one candidate from another. And I want to be upfront because if I don't have confidence in talking about my weakness, then maybe this is not the right place for me to work. So that's how I view it. And I think many people get this question asked, but they don't really think about this question. And I hope that when you get asked this question, you have done some preparation, but don't be afraid to be honest. Because if you're not honest at the interview, then what's going to happen after you get the job? And the way I look at it is that the reaction you want from the interviewer is like, first reaction when you say it is, I can't believe he went there. That should be the first reaction. And then after you explain it, oh, I'm glad he went there. I get it. That's the reaction you want. And if you get that reaction, believe me, with everything being equal, you're going to get the job. Good luck, and let me know what you think. Thank you.